right. Blow the trumpet. Gather the assembly together. Y'all ever think back how many centuries the assembly has gathered together? Gathered together to hear the word of God and to fellowship, love one another. We're a unique people, right? God's people, God's chosen people. Determined to set His love upon us, and what an amazing gift it is that He born us again by His grace. We're like those fish I told you Sunday, just out swimming in this world, just doing our own thing, and God reached down and drew us to Him, saved our soul, put His Spirit within us. What an amazing gift, right? Where would we be? What's the old saying? There but the grace of God go I. Whenever we see sin and evil in the world and things going on, that should be our response, one of compassion. There but the grace of God go I. All right, we're in Jeremiah 40. Moving right along, Jeremiah chapter 40. Last week we finally reached the point after all the warnings about Babylon coming, and guess what? They finally came, just like God said. And Judah has been conquered. The people scattered that were outside, those inside, were taken captive. Many people taken captive. Most of the people, in fact, were taken into captivity, and they took them all the way back to Babylon. Some of the poorest people were left behind, and Jeremiah, and as we'll see tonight, some of the military men, some of the army had scattered out, was hiding in different places, and so they're lingering around Jerusalem. But Babylon has taken most of the Jews back captive. Of course, the last king we saw, the wicked Zechariah, he was taken back to Babylon, and they made him watch his sons be killed, and then they took out his eyes. Remember that? Oh, wicked Zechariah. So now let's see what happens to Jeremiah. Verse 1, chapter 40. The word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord after Nebuzaradan, the captain of the bodyguard, had released him from Ramah, when he had taken him bound in chains among all the exiles of Jerusalem and Judah, who were being exiled to Babylon. Now I think it's important here in this first verse that we remember what happened at Ramah. Do y'all remember all the babies were killed? The prophecy. You remember about Rachel. Rachel died on the way, on the road. She died in Bethlehem, in that area. And look here on the screen back in Jeremiah 31:15 is where we saw this. Thus says the Lord, a voice is heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel is weeping for her children. She refuses to be comforted for her children because they are no more. So, in a nutshell, this is what happened here in this final deportation. As they were exiling, there's a lot of babies killed, a lot of people being killed during this ordeal. But I wanted you to see here tonight, in fact, you remember Matthew chapter 2, he chooses to use this scene here in Ramah during the final deportation of the Jews from Judah. He talks about it, but he's also giving you a future prophecy. Remember the time when Herod has all the male babies killed in Bethlehem and around that area. All right. Verse 2. Now the captain of the bodyguard had taken Jeremiah and said to him, the Lord your God promised this calamity against this place. And the Lord has brought it on and done just as He promised, because you people sinned against the Lord and did not listen to His voice. Therefore this thing has happened to you. Now how did the captain of the guard there know what God had promised? And that's kind of a question we can talk about at the end of the night. Think about that. How do you think this captain, Nebuchadnezzar's military man, his leader, how do you think he knew what God had promised? He also makes it clear here that he knows Jeremiah's God is powerful enough to do what he said. How do you think he knew that? The leaders of Judah didn't pay attention to what Jeremiah was warning them, but we see here Nebuchadnezzar's man does. Isn't that something? God's people wouldn't pay attention to the warnings, but these pagans, not God's people, they do. Interesting. Verse 4. But now, behold, I am freeing you today from the chains which are on your hands. If you would prefer to come with me to Babylon, come along, and I will look after you. But if you would prefer not to come with me to Babylon, never mind. Look, the whole land is before you. Go wherever it seems good and right for you to go. Now, something I failed to say earlier that I wanted you to remember about the Ramah scene. Jeremiah, as we're seeing here, he's taken to Ramah, maybe 5 miles or so north of Jerusalem. Okay, not a big deal, but that's where they were gathering all the people at, and however they were going to transport them to Babylon, that's where they were staging at. That's where they were meeting at. Jeremiah was there. Jeremiah sees these mothers weeping that the prophecy's right talking about. Jeremiah has that on his mind. And I think that's important for us to understand what Jeremiah had seen. All the people for 40 years wouldn't listen to what he had warned them. Remember, he kept telling them what the word of the Lord had said. What do? They keep chasing their idols. They keep chasing their idols. They keep living for self, right? Trying to do what they want to do, ignoring the word of God. So that was already breaking his heart. Now he sees all the death and destruction. We already know that they were starved to death in there. People were eating their children. We already know that was happening. 2 years, right, with the siege, at least 2 years, maybe more, with no food and people were in there boiling their babies. So Jeremiah's seen a lot of horrific things. And so this guy comes to him and says, hey, Jeremiah, he's taking the chains off of him. You're free to go wherever you want to go, man. Look, the whole land is before you. Wherever it seems good and right for you to go. Why does he do that? Look on the screen at Jeremiah 39. We saw this last week. Now Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, gave orders about Jeremiah through Nebuzaradan, the captain of the bodyguard, saying, take him, speaking of Jeremiah, take Jeremiah and look after him, and do nothing harmful to him, but rather deal with him just as he tells you. Isn't that something? Now, do you realize the importance that we are as believers to God? Who can lay any charge against the elect? Remember that? In Romans chapter 8? He goes through that great big thing there about how protected we are and how we belong to God. And I've stressed that to you often. When you look at your neighbor to your right or left and they're professing to be Christians, you need to always remember, they may look like a mess to you, but who are they to God? They're His. I've told the Sunday school teachers for years, different people teaching, when you're teaching these people in this church, remember, they're God's children. Imagine, now you say, imagine if God come to you and wanted you to babysit His child. How many of y'all, any of y'all, I know y'all have babysit children. That's a very important responsibility. You know, my poor dad got stuck with the new grandbaby last night, and he let her bust her little head, and blood was coming out, and it's just devastated him. It just tore him up, you know, and it's just a little minor little cut. But Pawpaw wasn't paying attention and let that baby get hurt. Can you imagine taking care of God's children? Well, you are. Look around you. Everybody we deal with that's Christians belong to God. And we ought to love them and take care of them like they're God's children. Because guess what? We're going to give an account one day on what we did while we were in this body, right? It appears the king of Babylon has learned to fear the God of Jeremiah. Wonder where he got that. Where do you think Nebuchadnezzar learned to fear the God of Jeremiah? He knows what he can, and he knows what he can't do now, right? You know what I think? You know who I think's been leading Nebuchadnezzar? That young man named who? Daniel. Y'all remember Daniel? Now, the Bible doesn't tell me that, but Daniel's been with him for a long time now, okay? For many years. And I think that after all that Nebuchadnezzar's gone through, the years that Daniel was back home, he's learned, don't mess with the God of Daniel. Don't mess with the God of Jeremiah. But why is he coming in still to take over Jerusalem? Because God said that was going to happen. Do you see the sovereignty of God work here? He's going to make things happen the way He intends for them to happen. He doesn't lose, right? Look at verse 5. As Jeremiah was still not going back, he said, so Jeremiah's not going back to Babylon. He says, going back then to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, whom the king of Babylon has appointed over the cities of Judah, and stay with him among the people. Or else, go anywhere it seems right for you to go. In other words, I'm not telling you what to do, Jeremiah. You're free. You're the only free one. You go do whatever you want to do. This is a special protection for Jeremiah. The picture of the special protection we have in Christ, okay? So the captain of the bodyguard gave him a ration and a gift and let him go. He did what the king had commanded. He let Jeremiah go free. Verse 6, what did Jeremiah do? Now, you're free. Think about it. There's all that big land over there. Y'all remember a few chapters back when Jeremiah had went to buy the land from his uncle? When Jeremiah was in prison? Everybody's starving to death. They ain't got any food, whatever, and his uncle wants Jeremiah to buy his land. I guess he thought that little bit of money Jeremiah would give him would give him enough money that he could stay alive on. It wasn't, right? But Jeremiah owns this land. You'd would think Jeremiah said, all right, hey, I'm fixing to go out here and just live on my own. I'm getting away from everybody. I'm not dealing with all this mess. Those people, I've spent 40 years trying to preach to them, and they won't listen. Now, see where I'm building up in your mind? What would you do? What would you do if you've been preaching to somebody for 40 years and they won't listen to you? Are you going to run right back to them and try to preach to them some more? Or are you going to go out and try to live on your own, do your own thing? Watch what Jeremiah does. Then Jeremiah went to Mizpah. That's a popular place. You can go all the way back between, remember Laban and Jacob? Jacob wanted Laban's daughter, Rachel, but he tricked him. He had to work for the other one, and then he finally they finally made this agreement after all those years that Jacob works for Laban, and they stacked up those stones at Mizpah. I think it's in, I didn't write a note on it, Genesis 30-something. You can go look it up. But go look up the neat little story between Jacob and Laban. And this is the same place, Mizpah. So Jeremiah goes to Mizpah to Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, and stayed with him among the people who were left in the land. Jeremiah had a chance to go to his land, to get away from all of this, but instead he goes back and he decides to live with the people under this appointed ruler that Nebuchadnezzar's placed ruling over Jerusalem. His name is Gedaliah, and he is a Jew. Okay? That's nothing new. We've already seen Nebuchadnezzar uses Jews to rule the other Jews. Look what he did with Daniel and all the princes that he brought. That's what he brought them there for, to train them in the Chaldean ways, so they can in turn train all of the Jews that they bring in captivity back to Babylon. Now they'll be in charge, and that's kind of the way he decided to let his kingdom be run. But what did Jeremiah do? Jeremiah goes back to where the people are at. Jeremiah shows us here a love for his people. That's a very important thing that I want you to think about tonight. He could have went on his own, but he chose to go back to his people. In fact, if you don't really understand how much Jeremiah loved his people, go read Lamentations. The whole book is full of Jeremiah what? Weeping over his people. Reminds me of the one that really shocks me the most is the Apostle Paul in the New Testament, when he says, I could wish myself accursed for the sake of my brethren, the Jews. Could you say that about anybody? Knowing it's an eternal hell, you can't get out of it. Could you swap with somebody? You know already that at the end, when he rolls it all up, your mind's going to be wiped clear. Isaiah says the former things will be looked on no more. You could just wait through all of that and you won't remember all this. Would you swap places with somebody? That's a hard thought, isn't it? Paul says that. I could wish myself accursed for the sake of my brethren. That's how much he loved his brethren. This is how much Jeremiah loves his people. He decides to go back to them, even though they haven't been listening to him. And it got me thinking. And ask yourself today, do you love the church that much? Do you love the church like this? And if not, why not? What I said at the beginning. They're God's people. Why wouldn't we love them? Jesus said, I pray, Father, that they be one. Remember John 17? I pray that they be one as you and I are one, right? And that they love one another. And that they abide in me. Remember all these things? Why don't we do that? Why don't we love the church the way Jeremiah? Why don't we truly deny self and take up the cross? Why don't we put our brother ahead of ourselves? Why don't we edify the church? What is wrong with us? Well, you can't answer for everybody else, can you? But you know who you can answer for? Me, myself, and I, right? Lord, let that not be said about me. You be the little Isaiah that stands up and realizes, and this is a very powerful part of that Isaiah 6, that he saw the Lord high and lifted up. It changed him. And he realized, I'm not worried about what they're doing, God. I'm a man of unclean lips among a people of unclean lips, right? And Isaiah was changed, and that's why I think Jeremiah and Daniel. And remember, Daniel prayed and clumped himself in there. Lord, we have sinned. We have sinned. We're thinking, wait a minute, Jeremiah, you didn't do nothing. You did everything, God. You've been above reproach, Daniel. Why are you clumping yourself in there with the rest of the wicked Jews who are being rebellious and chasing idols? Because they both recognize something. There's no good in us. There's no good in any of us. What do we learn in the New Testament? The only good in us is Christ in us, right? So that's why we don't look at the splinter in our, or the log in our, or the splinter in our neighbor's eye and forget the log in our own. Look at verse 7 now. So we've seen the love of Jeremiah for his people. Now watch this, verse 7. Now all the commanders of the forces that were in the field, they and their men, heard that the king of Babylon had appointed Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, over the land, and that he had put him in charge of the men, women, and children, those of the poorest of the land who had not been exiled to Babylon. So they came to Gedaliah at Mizpah, along with Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, and Johanan and Jonathan, the sons of Kareah, and Sariah, the son of Tanameth, and the sons of Epi, the Netophath, goodness gracious, and Jezaniah, the son of the Maccatite, both they and their men. All right, now, a lot of these people, when you see Ishmael, what does that make you think of? Right, the illegitimate son of Abraham, right? You know, Ishmael. This is where the Muslims, Islam comes from, through Ishmael's line. Okay, let me put it. The old preacher I heard years ago say, "These are the people across the river." I got you. We got more people, I think, from across the river here tonight than we do from this side of the river. But these are the people from the other side of the Jordan River, right? Ammon and the Amorites, all those people, right, that were not a part. Well, the Jews obviously have done mingled in with them. There's a lot of that going on. So that's why you see all these different names. Well, these men are the military men. It says the commanders, right? And they come across. They come all the way back into town. They hear that there's a Jew back in charge in Jerusalem around Mizpah in this area. So they come back to Gedaliah at Mizpah with all these other men. Okay? They're warriors. They're a part of an army. What do you think they're wanting to do before we get to it? They've been out there hiding from the other Babylonian army because they can't beat them. So they're not like suicidal men. They don't just run up and get slaughtered. They hide. Okay? They're probably like the same, probably the zealots that we'll read about in the New Testament. They probably come from these guys. This has been passed down. So they're kind of like conducting their own little guerrilla warfare out there. Well, look at verse 9. So they've come in to see Gedaliah, and Gedaliah the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, swore to them and to their men, saying, "Do not be afraid of serving the Chaldeans. Stay in the land and serve the king of Babylon, that it may go well with you." Now, in case any of you are new or you've forgotten, Chaldeans, Babylon, just remember the same group, okay? Same people, all right? So he says, "Hey, guys, good to see you, right? Glad you're back in town. But, hey, by the way, the fight's over. Just serve the Chaldeans. Don't be afraid of serving the Chaldeans, and it'll go well for you." Why do you think he told them that? Because he knows they're warriors. They're army. They're not wanting to come and serve anybody. They're wanting to come back in and take back over. So he's going ahead and cutting to the quick here, and he says, "Look, don't be afraid to serve the Chaldeans. Now as for me," verse 10, "Behold, I'm going to stay at Mizpah to stand for you before the Chaldeans who come to us." Because what do you think the Chaldeans are going to want to do with military men? They're a possible threat, right? They come back in town and find out here's all the army men. They're not going to, well, hey, well, good to have y'all here. They're not the poor and the weak among the rest of them, right? They're going to instantly, red flags go up. So he says, "I'm going to stay here and I'm going to stand for you." In other words, I'm going to talk to the Chaldeans who come to us. You got nothing to worry about. But I want you just to go, watch this. You go gather in wine and summer fruit and oil and put them in your storage vessels and live in your cities that you have taken over. All right, so you guys have been out hiding. They come in. He knows what they're up. But he says, "I just want you to go obey the Chaldeans, live in peace, go back home." Right? Just go back home. Start growing your crops. Give up this idea of you're going to take back over Jerusalem and we're going to go back up there and get our people back, right? Now, how many of us would think that, right? They've come in here and kidnapped our kids and our family. We're wanting to go get them back, right? I know. We would. We'd start wanting to. Well, he's saying don't do that, okay? Just go back home, live, and grow crops and live. Do y'all remember what God had told them in the beginning for all of this? If you fight, if you resist, what? You'll die. Sword, famine, pestilence. But if you go out and give yourselves up, surrender, you'll live. God's in control of all of this. And we'll make a strong point about this tonight. It's still pertinent to us today. Okay? Look at verse 11. Likewise, also all the Jews who were in Moab and among the sons of Ammon and Edom, see, they're mixed in with all the foreigners and who were in all other countries. They just scattered. Babylon's coming. These people have been running, scattering, okay? They heard that the king of Babylon had left the remnant for Judah and that he had appointed over them Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan. Then all the Jews returned. So now it's not just the warriors, it's the rest of the other Jews. They all returned from all the places to which they had been driven away and came to the land of Judah. They're all back home. And they come to Gedaliah, the one in charge at Mizpah, and gathered in wine and summer fruit in great abundance. All right, so all the people's been out there hiding, and now it's safe to come back home. But here's something I want you to pick up on this. We see here how God provides for the remnant. Never forget that. God always provides for the remnant. What does Paul tell us in Romans 9? One day, all Israel will be saved. He's going to bring them back. He's going to restore. He keeps a remnant. He always keeps a remnant. Look at verse 13. Now Johanan the son of Kareah and all the commanders of the forces that were in the field came to Gedaliah at Mizpah and said to him, all right, so they go back home, apparently. They go back out there, but they've been out there. What would you be doing? What do you think they're out there doing? Strategizing, right? So they come back to Gedaliah, and here's what they tell him. Are you well aware that Baalis, the king of the sons of Ammon, has sent Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, to take your life? But Gedaliah, the son of Ahikam, did not believe them. Then Johanan, the son of Kareah, spoke secretly to Gedaliah in Mizpah, saying, let me go and kill Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, and not a man will know. Why should he take your life? So that all the Jews who are gathered to you would be scattered, and the remnant of Judah would perish. But Gedaliah the son of Ahikam said to Johanan the son of Kareah, do not do this thing, for you are telling a lie about Ishmael. All right, so they've devised this plan. Now, their goal, be clear, is to be back in power. God had already told them, as I said, don't resist what's happening here. You are under my punishment. You're going to go through the punishment. Don't try to get out of it, right? Just give in to it. But he's already promised them too, 70 years, right? They're going to come back. Daniel's read, right? He knows they're coming back in 70 years. But you're going to go through the captivity. But here's these people still not listening to what God had told them. And they're devising a lie. They're scheming a lie just to try to trick him into doing this thing, which is going to do nothing but cause them more and more trouble. All right? So you want to know what happened? Come back next week. We'll see what happens next week. But I want to tell you in closing how this relates to us today. Look on the screen with me at John 18:33. John 18:33. And the reason I'm telling you this today is because there's a movement in our country, not so much in other countries, but in our country, of people who believe that it's our job to rise up and take over the world as Christians. Right? So I want us to be clear, at least this little flock that God has given me a responsibility over. We are not here to build a government. We're not here to fight and kill wicked people. I'm like, who you going to, everybody is, right? We're not here to take over the state or the country or any of that. We are here to preach the gospel. We are here to make disciples. Now, is it okay in God's plan for us to be involved in picking our leaders? Well, yeah. And I think we should. I actually take great honor in thinking about the men and women who've laid down in foreign battlefields so that we can live freely in this country, so that we can go and elect leadership we would like to pick leadership that would most closely represent what God would want us to live like, right? So when I get a politician that tells me we're going to do blah, 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 and I'm like, that's not what God said, I'm not voting for you. I'm looking for one who's going to try to do what God is leading them to do, because all leadership, all government, right, comes from God, and they're supposed to submit to God. So I'm all for a civil responsibility that we have to go and choose leaders as best we can. But we are not to take up arms and go into the world and kill wicked people so that we can put Christians in there as leaders. That's not how it's done. All right, watch what Jesus said about it, in case you're thinking, well, Derek, that's just your opinion. You know me too well. I'm not going to sit up here and spout and shoot off at the mouth my opinion. I'm going to tell you what the Bible says. Jesus makes it perfectly clear in this passage, in this scene with Pilate. Therefore Pilate entered again into the praetorium and summoned Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Are you saying this on your own initiative, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate answered, "I'm not a Jew, am I?" He's kind of being smart. "Look, I ain't got time to fool with you nasty little Jew. Tell me, answer my question, dadgummit." That's kind of how he's talking to him, right? You're like, who do you think you are questioning me? I'm asking you a question. So this is the whole context of the passage. Pilate said, "I'm not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests delivered you to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world." Here it is. "If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this realm." So that clears it up. There is no misinterpretation of that passage. He said, if my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting. He's not talking about a spiritual fight. He knows what they want. The Jewish people wanted him to overthrow Jerusalem, just like the Maccabees had come in and done. They wanted a ruler, a military ruler, to come in and overthrow, and he said, "Nope, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to die." They picked up stones to kill him, right? And then they eventually crucified him on the cross. So I want you to be clear. Jesus said, "My servants are not fighting because this is not our kingdom." Therefore Pilate said to him, well, first of all, he said, "My kingdom is not of this realm." Therefore Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say correctly that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." So, we're not trying to take over the world by killing people who are our enemies. We are to preach the gospel to them. Now, this is another side, the group that's going out, and they would stand. Most of them are going to say, "No, we don't believe in taking up arms." But yet, everything about their look is militant. They're always toting machine guns around, or some kind of a Second Amendment shirts on, all about try to take my guns and all this stuff. And I'm big. I'm an ardent patriot. I'm a Second Amendment guy. But listen to me. When it comes to what Jesus said, we are not storing up treasures on earth. This ain't our forever home. If they're going to come in and take us captive, we don't resist the government. Where are we going? We're going to jail. We're not going to go around like a bunch of zealots and start killing people. We go to jail and preach the gospel. If we get put in concentration camps, we're just going to go in there and starve to death with the rest of the Christians, and we're going to be preaching the gospel to the rest of the people starving. We are not here to fight to preserve our way of life in this country. Now, I'll stand on that, because that's biblical. You're going to run into a lot of people and say, "Well, Derek, I don't agree with that." Well, you're unbiblical. Because Jesus said, "If my servants would be fighting," meaning what? We don't fight like that. That's not our job. Now, he has instituted a government, right? That's where the military and the police, their job is to go out and fight against evil and wicked. That's why we have them. Secondly, I want you to be clear here. We do have a right to defend ourselves. A lot of people don't understand that biblically. We have a right to take care of our family. In our homes, there's no policeman living in your home. Well, Fred can't say that. Pat can't say that. But there's no policeman living in our homes, right? So somebody comes knocking on your door tonight in a dangerous way, in a threatening manner, are you going to start preaching the gospel to them, JR, or are you going to defend your family? You can defend your family. That's your God-given right, your instinct to do that. You're not bearing the sword in vain. You're trying to protect your family. But now you're not trying to go out in the streets and gather every man in Cheatham County to get his guns and let's go to Nashville and kill the liberals. Okay? That's not what we're here to do. And I want you guys to be clear on that. In fact, the last little note here I wanted you to understand, besides preaching the gospel, making disciples, Jesus said, love our enemies and pray for those who persecute us. Here's the last thing. Why shouldn't we be in captivity just like Judah? Think about it. Look at the Christian, the nature of the church in America today. Why shouldn't we be in captivity? What's different about us, the church in America, than Judah of old or Israel of old? I don't see any different. We spend far more time loving this world than serving Jesus. The proof's in the pudding, right? You look around and see it. Well, we can't fix everybody, can we? But what we can do, this little small group, I love the song we sing. Dana sings it all the time. It only takes a spark to get a fire going. Don't you love that old song? We can individually say, you know what? I'm not going to be a combative person. I'm not going to be a loving this world person, chasing the idols of this world and all this stuff, serving self. I'm going to surrender to Christ, and I'm going to die to self, deny self, and take up the cross and follow Him. And I'm going to preach the gospel. I'm going to love my enemies, pray for those who persecute us. I'm going to do that. How about you? All right. Everybody got any comments or questions tonight?